tried to pull free of his hands, but Chase tightened his hold even as Ty gripped her shoulders from behind.
"It's too late, Cat,"
Chase stated in a firm voice.
"Rep was killed, instantly."
She stared at him for a long, brittle second, her expression awash with shock, pain, and denial. "It can't be true," she said in the thinnest of whispers. "It can't be true."
"I'm sorry."
There were no other words Chase could say. "No. No!" She said it over and over, her voice growing in strength and volume until she was screaming it. Chase gathered her rigid body into his arms and silently absorbed the pounding of her fists on his chest, wading through the rage until she finally sagged against him and broke into body-wrenching sobs. "I'll bring the truck around," Ty said quietly, and Chase nodded. Kat sat between the two men, her head lolling against the seat back.
"Neil Anderson's youngest boy, Raleigh, was driving on the wrong side of the road. The tire tracks indicate Rep swerved to avoid a head-on, but Anderson's pickup plowed into the driver's side."
"And Raleigh?" Ty asked.
"He had a gash to his forehead."
The grimness in her father's voice was tangible.
"He'd been drinking then,"
Ty muttered in a tone that matched her father's.
"His blood alcohol level was way over the limit. He passed out at the scene."
With a strangled sound of protest, Kat swallowed back a sob. Ty muttered a choice expletive and fell silent. The warmth and roughness of her father's hand settled over Kat's. In his touch there was both comfort and strength. The urge was strong to turn into his arms and cry more tears, but it wasn't what he would have done. Never once had she seen her father break down after her mother died. For the longest time she believed that he had resisted it because to do otherwise would have been a sign of weakness. Now she understood that the pain and grief were too personal, too intimate, reaching beyond anyone else's understanding. The pickup truck pulled up in front of the massive two-story house that 4 generations of Calders had called home. Long known as simply the homestead, it stood on a knoll overlooking the cluster of buildings that made up the CCC headquarters. Through tear-blurred eyes, Kat saw her brother's soon-to-be bride, Jessie Niles, waiting on the front porch. Slim-hipped and long-legged in her typical dress of boots, blue jeans, and white cotton shirt, she had been raised on the CCC. Her roots went deep into the soil. From the first day the ranch had come into existence, Niles had worked on it. It was a claim that could be made by several other families, including Rep Taylor and his parents. Rep. A fresh wave of anguish ripped through Kat at the thought of never seeing him again, of never feeling his arms around her. He had been her first love, her only love. Now he was gone forever, leaving Kat with a gaping emptiness she didn't think she could endure. But of course, she would. That's what made it so painful.
"Kat."
There was a tug on her hand, followed by her father's gently insistent voice.
"Come on. Let's go in the house now."
Jessie came to greet them, her attention centering on Kat, but not before her glance had run to Ty in a quick, warm look of love and relief that he had safely returned to her. Then her hazel eyes were on Kat, direct as always, and full of compassion. "The Taylors send you their sympathies." "You've seen his parents?" Kat asked, only now giving a thought to the enormity of their loss. "I stayed with them for a while this morning." Kat looked in the direction of their house. "I need to go see them."
"Later,"
her father stated. Without protest, Kat submitted to the guiding pressure of the hand that directed her toward the house. It was a quiet group that entered the big house and walked directly to the sprawling living room. Chase paused beside his favorite armchair. Kat continued toward the oak staircase.
"Kat?"
"I'm going to my room." Her voice was flat, drained of all emotion. When she was nearly to the top, Ty murmured to Jessie.
Maybe you should go with her.
Jessie shook her head. No. I think she would rather be alone right now. Jessie sensed Ty's disagreement and understood its cause. For too long he had regarded his sister as headstrong and impetuous, on the irresponsible side, and more than a little spoiled by an adoring and indulgent father. He didn't realize that in addition to his mother's beauty and capacity for sudden fury, Kat had also inherited a good deal of Calder steel and that unbendable iron pride of a Calder. And, like a Calder, she wanted to grieve in private.
I'll check on her later,
Chase said firmly, settling the matter. Chase lowered himself into the armchair while Jessie left to bring coffee.
What about Raleigh Anderson? Ty asked. Has he been arrested?
I was told charges would be filed as soon as he's sober enough to understand them.
A threat of anger edged the clipped reply.
I understand he has 3 previous drunk driving convictions. With a manslaughter charge, it's virtually guaranteed he'll serve time.
Well, that will make things rough on Neil Anderson and his wife, Ty remarked. Anderson is too old and too crippled with arthritis to keep the place going without help, and they can't afford to pay a hired hand.
The Andersons owned a small farm along the eastern boundary of the Triple C. Most of the time, they had barely eked out a living. Raleigh Anderson was the youngest of 3 sons and the only one still living at home. Jessie returned with the coffee. She set a mug on the table next to Chase, then handed a mug to Ty and sat on the couch next to him, their legs touching. Ty never ceased to be amazed by the warm ease he felt with Jessie, an ease that produced its own kind of heady glow. This was love, strong, steady, and certain. He knew now that he had never truly loved Tara, his first wife. He had been so dazzled by her dark beauty that he'd mistaken it for love, and completely ignored the fact that they shared neither the same values nor the same loyalties, until Jessie opened his eyes. Something, some movement, some whisper of sound pulled Chase's glance to the side hall that led to the rear of the house. A lanky, dark-eyed man with metal-gray hair stood in the hall shadows. Cully O'Rourke had a coyote's stealth, always somewhere around but rarely showing himself. And when he did, he was silent, like now.
Hello, Cully.
Although the man was his mother's brother, Ty had never felt comfortable enough with Cully to address him as uncle. Cully's hatred toward the Calders had been all-consuming. Even now, after 20 years, it made Ty wary of trusting Cully too much.
I heard the plane.
Cully fingered the brim of a battered hat in his hands, his sharp gaze darting between the 2 men.
Where is Kat? Didn't she come home with you?
Yes, she's upstairs in her room. Whatever personal doubts he had about Cully O'Rourke, Ty never doubted that he adored Kat as much as he had once adored Ty's mother.
I'd like to see her.
He looked directly at Chase.
I don't know if you heard that Rep was...
Cully cut in before the sentence was finished.
I heard about the boy dying. I'd like to see Kat,
he repeated.
Go ahead,
Chase granted the request. No one had to tell him the location of Kat's room, even though he'd been in the house no more than a dozen times in his life. Cully had spent many a night watching for a light to shine from its window. He didn't take lightly the vow he had made at the foot of Maggie's grave to look after her daughter and keep her safe from harm. The bedroom was bright and young girl feminine with floral-patterned wallpaper in tones of mauve, pink, and green. But Cully didn't notice it or the wide ruffles that ringed its old-fashioned vanity table. His gaze went straight to the dark-haired woman standing at the window, seeing again the strong resemblance to his sister and recalling the time their father had been killed. Maggie's face had been just as deathly pale as Kat's was now, and her green eyes had burned with the same bottomless pain that no amount of tears could ease. Kat spoke. Rep is dead.